Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
What's up, Hokie Nation? And welcome into episode 498 of the Tech Sideline podcast. 17 days away between Virginia Tech and VMI. Today we preview the offense for James Franklin and the Hokies. All that and much more coming up in episode 498 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. And we record on Wednesday, August 19th, 2026 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer this show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. To his left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. And Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. Guys, before we really get underway, it's crazy driving around Blacksburg today because the students are back in town. The traffic is back in Blacksburg, Virginia. It's crazy to think about, really.
Yeah, Gucci Kroger was a little more packed. The gym was more packed yesterday.
So don't even try to go to Target.
Oh,
Over there.
It's good. It's good to have some life back in the town because the summer was pretty dead.
Yes.
I drove to Substation yesterday after we recorded our podcast.
Oh, yes.
Had to get a number 19. And there, by the roundabout right there are a bunch of, students jumping up and down with signs, and I'm like, they should have like a Blacksburg Bombers like champions.
We're gonna milk
sign.
that through the end of time, by the way.
Absolutely.
2026 softball league
We've
champions.
got like 7 months until we have to start back up again.
Yeah.
Like
It's a long
coming
off
fast.
season.
and I think Nick's,
You're getting too big. Your heads are getting big, guys.
No,
I'm telling
man.
you. Yeah,
Nick's- but
you're
Nick's-
not gonna. You're going to
The
go into
disease
season
of more
overconfident.
Just
was the Pat Riley thing.
hey,
The disease
we
of war, that's right.
First of all, we earned it, and second of all, I think Nick's grandfather said he's going to buy us a trophy, and Nick said he's going to make sure that everyone gets to spend a day with it.
Yeah,
It's like
I'm
the
down.
That's what I'm
the
talking
Stanley
about.
Cup here.
You can take
Exactly.
it downtown like the Commonwealth Cup.
There you go.
Exactly.
Everybody can
To
drink out of
Sharkies
it.
we go.
Think about it.
To champs.
The next time we go to Tots,
Mhm.
we're going to have to stand in line and
Yep.
pay a cover.
Yep.
Well, that's the only bad part about the students coming back.
What you got, Nick? Something behind the scenes?
The fall league starts next week, so unfortunately we won't be defending champs for less. We'll be
that's
defending
the
champs
fall
for
league
less than like
completely.
The
6
fall
months.
league is
We'll be
different than the
It's
summer
more
league.
competitive
We'll be
allegedly
defending
because
summer league champs.
there's
Right.
there's more students in this league, so I heard it's more competitive. Unfortunately,
Well,
so I don't know if we might be called a Mickey Mouse ring because we didn't compete with the big dogs. But
Whatever.
Well,
Intercontinental champion is still the champion.
well,
Correct.
Still a
Yeah.
champion.
some of us,
A lot of times a better wrestler than the world
That's right.
champion.
Exactly.
some of us have to travel and cover James
Yeah, there
Franklin's
is a-
football program during the fall, so we don't have time.
There is a football season to have happen. And hey, let's talk about it. So offensively for Virginia Tech. So if you missed it yesterday, good time to plug it. We talked defense and special teams for Virginia Tech. Today, we're going to talk offense. And before we get into personnel, Ty Howle takes over as the first-year offensive coordinator for the Hokies. Kind of going back to the offseason and the hire a little bit, one of the concerns with bringing in Ty Howle was he had never been a full-time offensive coordinator, and actually very similar to Tyler Bowen. He actually looks just like him too, by the way. But where are we at right now from a sense of hiring Ty Howle and bringing him in to lead the Hokies offensively in 2026 and beyond?
I could understand, some concern there because he's a former college offensive lineman who became a tight ends coach, and he has 1 year of coordinated experience at the FCS level, and he was an assistant at Penn State. So that's pretty much exactly Tyler Bowen's resume, right? You hired Tyler Bowen 2.0. Now, Tyler Bowen was one of 3 guys with inexperience. First-time head coach, first-time offensive coordinator at this level, first-time defensive coordinator. And it's a little bit different this time around. And, you listen to James Franklin talk about his experiences at Penn State and why he hired Ty Howle. And, he wants to play complementary football. And just reading between the lines, they went through a lot of offensive coordinators at Penn State. And reading between the lines, he felt like sometimes some of those offensive coordinators might have come in and tried to impose their will maybe a little bit too much on, here's what I'm going to call because I want to be the best offensive coordinator I can be and I want to score as many points as possible. But there are certain times in a game where you need to help your defense per se. Sometimes on 3rd and 8, the best decision is running the football and then punting for field position, right? If you've got a great defense. That doesn't help your offensive stats, but it helps you win football games sometimes. And I think there were times at Penn State because he kept maybe hiring not necessarily a bad offensive coordinator, but the wrong offensive coordinator. And it just didn't mesh well. And I think he's big now after some of those experiences on, okay, we've got to have coordinators that understand how to win football games as a team, not necessarily putting up the best stats that their units can put up.
This sounds like a roundabout, impassioned defense of Brian Steinspring right here. That you're making, right? No, I think you're right. I think sometimes you go for the sexy hire and the hire, oh, you won the offseason with this hire, and that doesn't quite fit with what you want to do offensively. I think Franklin had that a couple times at Penn State. He cycled through them quickly. And what he's talked about with Howle, who is decidedly not a sexy hire. That was not the name that everybody's like, oh, you got to go get this guy, Joe Moorhead, or this guy to run your offense and stuff. It's like, oh, you're promoting the tight ends coach from your previous stop. That's not one that really won headlines, but I think it's the offense they want to run. They want to play defense. They want to run the ball. They want to, play action, throw to the tight ends. That's the offense they want to run and the vision they have. So I think if you're simpatico there between the head coach and the offensive coordinator, that can help a lot of things out. And the way they talk, they have a similar vision for how they want the offense to run, how they want the team to operate. And, that might be bigger than going out there and, throwing for 400 yards a game or something like that if it doesn't fit with what you're trying to do.
Franklin's an offensive guy, and it seems like he has kind of been preparing Ty Howle for this role for a really long time at Penn State, giving him more and more and more responsibility. I would say the biggest thing is they just got to make sure it's structured the right way. And I trust that James Franklin, being a very experienced head coach, will structure it properly, whereas the previous head coach, who was in his first year, structured a first-time play caller poorly with the other guys around him. And if you recall, one of the big flaws with Tyler Bowen was that the people he was leaning on, and Brad Glenn and Joe Rudolph, both immediately left after the first season. I think they've got a really good group in place where Matt Moore and Fontel Mines bring continuity, but also like Norval McKenzie, he's assistant head coach for a reason. He's kind of like Franklin's number 2 coach, honestly. And Howell's the tight ends coach, and Danny O'Brien is the quarterbacks coach, and he and Howell work together at Penn State. So I think there's a lot more continuity there. You feel stronger about it. But then again, it'll be an experience kind of seeing how Howell calls games and the way he likes to attack things. And he's kind of laying out James Franklin's vision, if you will, but we haven't really gotten to experience it yet.
Do you remember that first year under Tyler Bowen, about halfway through the season, they put Brad Glenn up in the booth with him to try to, hold his hand and get him through it? And remember the interview with Brad Glenn where he was like, so yeah, I can talk to him during the game, but one of the things I do is sometimes I pass notes to him saying, here's maybe something you need to think about right now. And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay,
the alarm bell should have been going off at that point.
Yeah,
this was a bad arrangement.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see anything like that this time.
Okay. You mentioned the staff a little bit. One guy you did not mention, David, is somebody who can help out Ty Howle is Warren Ruggiero, who's on the staff, who was the offensive coordinator at Wake for the longest time, just came from Iowa, had been with Dave Clawson through the longest period of time. Somebody like that on the staff can certainly help out. Again, to your point, you mentioned the Brad Glenn thing, but this guy can certainly help out Ty Howle going forward, too.
Yeah, I mean, the Tech's not going to be running the slow mesh or anything like that as far as I know. Certainly haven't seen anything like that when we've been in there. But an experienced set of eyes like that can say, okay, here's what maybe you could be expecting as far as how the defense is going to attack you. And here's an exploitable part of the defense that I think is there that maybe you could go after. And, as Franklin said on Media Day, that could certainly work as long as both guys go into the relationship with no ego.
Well, Ruggiero, could and probably should be an offensive coordinator still right now. And I think he said when we interviewed him in the spring that he had an offer on the West Coast and they want to relocate the family out there. I want to stay on the East Coast like that. He's somebody, you look at Howell and you go, well, he's never really called plays before. Ruggiero has for a long time. So you have somebody in that room in the booth that at least has had that experience and can offer some help. And he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to overstep his role and push the boundaries of what he should be doing in the press box there. But I think it's nice to have somebody like that to help along.
Looking at the personnel now as a whole, we'll start with the quarterback position. And we've talked about Ethan Grunkemeyer quite a bit since the day he committed in January. But let's assume he's the starting quarterback for a minute for Virginia Tech, because let's be honest, he's going to be the starting quarterback for Virginia Tech. What type of year can he have for the Hokies? And really, what, from a game standpoint, what does he bring to the table this year for Virginia Tech?
I think he brings a lot of arm talent and a lot of natural passing ability. Like, there were plenty of times where Drones was just kind of afraid to pull the trigger. He didn't trust his accuracy to fit it in between defenders and things like that, and then he'd hold it too long and either scramble or get sacked. You actually saw that in his one and only NFL game with the Packers. He attempted one pass but got sacked 3 times, right? He just wasn't letting go of the football, and Grunkemeyer is not that type. He's very confident in his own arm, knows where to go with the football generally. Now, he's still a young quarterback, very young quarterback. His first 3 starts last year were against
Iowa on the road, at Ohio State, and then Indiana at home.
Right? All 3 top 10 defenses, right? And so he had quite the welcoming to college.
But you saw
football.
him progress.
But yeah, that third game against Indiana, he started playing better and honestly became closer to beating Fernando Mendoza than any other quarterback last year. I mean, Mendoza won the Heisman that day on that last drive of the game. Mm-hmm. Just about, you could make that argument. I think he's a guy who you're gonna, by the end of the season, you're gonna say, yeah, that was a much more traditional passing game. We had a real passing quarterback in there, and we could see the difference. But he's still a young player, was still with plenty of room to improve, because they still had the training wheels on him to a certain extent towards the end of last year, with so many short screen passes and things like that, and which plays that honestly should be a part of any offense, because sometimes that can be just an easy 5 yards and an extension of the running game. But he's a guy that I think will probably have a good year, with obviously a lot of room to grow as well. And from an intangible standpoint, I've heard he's got some pretty good leadership skills. Now, the thing is, we're gonna have to condition ourselves to not expect the quarterback to rush for 600 yards and be running over linebackers. I mean,
right.
He had negative rushing yards.
He's such a different style of quarterback than what Virginia Tech has been used to for 30 years now. I mean, really, you go back and you look at the type of quarterbacks that Virginia Tech has had, and even guys that you wouldn't think were all that mobile. Grant Wells or Ryan Willis.
Brewer.
Brewer. They moved around quite a bit and ran more than you think. I'm looking at Grant Wells's rushing totals here for a couple years. Or touchdowns. His first year with Tech, he had 6 rushing touchdowns.
The first touchdown of the Brent Pry era was a Grant Wells option touchdown run.
At ODU.
Ryan Willis had 354 yards rushing though in 2018, 4 rushing touchdowns. So they actually carried the ball a bit more. I don't think you're going to get that with Grunkemeyer. I don't think they're running the read option with him too much. I'm not saying he's a statue back there, but just the style that they're going to have a quarterback, I think it's a more traditional pocket passer, and that's good for the running backs, especially around the goal line. Marcellus Hawkins perhaps could punch it in a bit more. I think that's good for the receivers, because and the offensive line, in the sense that I don't know what it is. Sometimes on the algorithm on Twitter, stuff just gets in your feed, in a run for some reason. For some reason in my feed lately, there's been a lot of stuff about how quarterbacks play a factor into sack rates a lot more than people think. And great quarterbacks can just get rid of the ball, or, how quickly you get rid of the ball and holding on to it too long is a problem. There was one clip, the Vikings announcer, Paul Allen, just goes crazy all the time. There's one of him in the playoffs against the Rams where Sam Darnold got sacked 10 times in that game, and he's dropping back and he holds the ball too long, and Paul Allen's just throw the ball, just get rid of it. You can't hold it for 5 seconds. That is kind of the deal with quarterbacks. You got to get rid of the ball quickly. I think Grunkemeyer does. And so I think you even heard, Matt Moore talk about it in the spring, the ball's getting out quick. you know, will look better as a pass blocking unit just because the ball gets out quicker. It's a different style, and I think maybe a welcome one after what Virginia Tech's seen the last couple of years.
And I think when that bleeds over to a really strong tight end room and wide receivers, and like a guy like Aiden Green, who I think he's taking steps forward each year, but I think he'll take an even bigger leap forward now.
Yeah.
Because he's got a really talented passing quarterback in Ethan Grunkemeyer. Like, I think it will permeate through the rest of the offense. It'll be different, but like a guy in Benji Gosnell, who was barely used last year, will be in a much better spot simply because Grunkemeyer's style and the style of the offense fits him better.
Where are we at with the backup quarterback, by the way? We've talked about this the last couple of weeks, but Bryce Baker, Troy Hume, a little bit of backstory. Hume was a promising recruit, now true freshman that was committed to Penn State, originally from California, now is at Virginia Tech. Bryce Baker, who was really the crown jewel of originally Mac Brown and then Bill Belichick's first recruiting class at Carolina, and did not get on the field. So two high-level guys in theory, but neither have gotten on the field at the collegiate level. So how do we view the backup quarterback position right now?
I heard going into practice that the biggest competition at quarterback was the backup for the number 2 spot. And that was Bryce Baker and Troy Hume specifically. I think Keldon Ryan is a better natural passer than Kyron Drones, but I think he's behind Baker and Hume at this point.
Recruited by the previous staff too,
as well.
It's something to factor in.
That's exactly right. So I think that's an interesting battle. I guess you would go Baker just based on seniority, but you got to go back and remember that Troy Hume's first scrimmage at Virginia Tech this past spring, he went 18 of 20. Right. I think he's a high ceiling guy at quarterback. You know, a little bit concerned about his future because he's stuck between Ethan Grunkemeyer and a top 100 guy coming in next year, but that's a good problem to have. This could be a battle, you know, that continues to go on after the season begins, because ultimately I think we'll see both of those guys against VMI. The number one, the ideal scenario is that Grunkemeyer plays the first half and one of those other 2 guys plays the third quarter and the other plays the fourth quarter. And, you know, you get some film of those guys and you see how they adjust to how defenses are playing them on the field. And you know, maybe one of them takes off from there and proves to be the number 2 guy. But, yeah, you know, and that's the concern. You know, we're going to talk about tight ends later and how that's arguably the most experienced tight end group in the country. Well, this is probably the least experienced quarterback room in the country. You've got one guy who started for a half a season and then 3 guys who have never taken a college snap. So what happens if Grunkemeyer goes down? And the short answer is right now, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ordinarily I'd say Hume, a guy that the staff recruited, might have an edge in that situation. But Baker was a guy that Penn State recruited when Franklin was there, has ties to O'Brien. So, yeah, it's tough to handicap that race right now. We've seen so little at practice. It's not like we're out there in a scrimmage and like, oh, this guy looked really sharp in the scrimmage. We don't really know. So, you know, I'll be curious to see how that shakes out, what the depth chart looks like when they release that, and, you know, what the order is they put him in, ideally against VMI.
You were talking about, Chris, the Peter Bork coming in next year, and it seems like the Hokies might be in the running for a 4-star quarterback in the 2028 class as well. It's like, the quarterback room is going to be stacked with talent. Only problem is only one guy can play, but that is a great problem to have, as you said. And I think it's probably been a really long time since Virginia Tech felt, even in Baker and Hume, felt this confident in guys' ability to throw the ball.
To 2019.
Go back to Willis, Hooker, and Patterson.
And Patterson was not a college quarterback, but he could really throw the football. He had great arm talent.
So you've got a pretty neat combination, and hopefully the Hokies don't have to go to that second, third option in a pinch. But I think they feel okay if they had to. But we're not really sure who that second guy is. I think it still has to play out through the rest of camp.
Well, we got your answer. We got Chris's answer. Andy, I am curious with you too. If Ethan Grunkemeyer goes down, do you feel okay about the quarterback room behind him?
Not especially.
Okay.
I think Grunkemeyer showed that he can perform at this level. it's just unknown.
Yeah.
You don't know those guys. It can all look good on paper, and you look at the recruiting rankings and say, oh yeah, this is a stacked quarterback room. All right. I've seen 4-star quarterbacks fail all the time at the college level, just whether that's misevaluations or just didn't click for them for whatever reason. Until you get them in the game and see game speed and they're making the decisions like that, you just don't know. And I think if I were the coach of the Hokies, that would scare me a little bit going into the season. And now I don't think they'd ever admit that. I don't think they'd ever come out and say that. But I think inexperience and the unknown is what would concern a coach the most going into a situation like that.
Well, one of the not so unknowns is the running back room for Virginia Tech. You look at what Norval McKenzie and James Franklin are going to try it out there, and that's a pretty nice group. Marcellus Hawkins, Jeffrey Overton Jr., and Bill Davis, the transfer from Louisiana, are probably your top three. But then Messiah Mickens and somebody that I think you mentioned as a kick returner yesterday, David, that you kind of forget about is still here, is Tyler Mason. So how do we view the running back room right now as a whole? And I assume those would be the top three right now for the Hokies.
I would think so. I feel very good about the running back room. Marcellus Hawkins was a big play back last year. As David Teal pointed out to us, he averaged, out of like the last 25 years, he averaged the most yards per carry of any Tech back with 100-plus carries, with the exception of Khalil Herbert in 2020, which was, the COVID year behind an NFL offensive line, basically, with 5 guys who went on the NFL.
Well, look at the ACC. He had the best yards per carry average of anybody. They had 100 carries last year.
And behind an offensive line that was not exactly a bunch of NFL guys. It was an offensive line that was short on experience, short on bodies, all of that. So I think he proved himself last year, was very good. Jeffrey Overton Jr., he's one of the few running backs last year that made Miami's defense look slow. That was almost a national championship defense, and he had a big game against them. And Hawkins had a big game against them as well. It's just they could only combine for 16 carries because Virginia Tech got down early by 17 or 20 or something like that. And then Bill Davis, coming in, he's got, I believe, over 1,500 career rushing yards, 1,600, something like that. Had back-to-back 700-yard seasons. Big-bodied guy, can certainly help the team. I think you got to feel confident in that group. And then you've got Messiah Mickens in there as a 4-star recruit out of high school, and Tyler Mason is entering his 3rd season. And I feel very good about this group, not only from their talent level at the top, but I think they've got pretty good depth too.
I'll say this about James Franklin. He seems to know what he's doing with running backs and setting up a running back room. I mean, 2 years ago at Penn State, I know this is when were really humming at Penn State. Katron Allen, 1,108 yards. Nick Singleton, 1,099 yards. 2,000-yard rushers. They combined for 20 rushing touchdowns. I mean, obviously they had Saquon Barkley when they were there. Just the list of running backs that they had, they would stack those running back rooms so well, to the point that, Devin Ford, who was once thought to be like the savior recruit for Virginia Tech, if only they could land this guy, ended up going to Penn State and really didn't pan out, didn't do anything, because he was in a room with more talented guys there. And he had other issues when he was there as well. But I trust this staff's ability to recruit the running back position and have them set. Now, 2 of these guys they inherited, or 2 of the top 2 guys, Hawkins and Overton. But they brought in Mickens, and I think they have a plan for how this thing is gonna, the succession line that they're gonna have there, and the outlook seems good there.
I think it's amazing what they did at Penn State the last 4 years. The top 2 running backs, those 2 guys you mentioned, were their top 2 guys each of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So they developed them. Those guys were ready to go as like redshirt freshmen.
And usually it's like you have one guy that'll go 2 series, and then another guy that will go 1 series.
Right.
And that's sort of the trade-off that they do. It seemed like almost a timeshare between those 2 there.
Yeah, it really did.
It's back in the era of the untouchables,
right,
with Lee Suggs, Kevin Jones. If they could get back to that at Virginia Tech, I think a lot of fans would love that.
Sure would.
To have a running game like that.
And I think when you look at Norval McKenzie's history, has put 2 or 3 guys in the NFL from his past jobs, and was part of a very productive rushing attack down at Georgia Tech. Granted, that included a lot of quarterback, but his running backs were very good as well. I just think with Franklin's philosophy and McKenzie's history of developing running backs, I think that's a very good marriage.
I think, we've both noticed it. I think just Mackenzie's intensity at practice. He gets into those guys, and we've seen glimpses of what Overton can do. I mean, he's Virginia Tech's future at this position.
Mm-hmm.
He's a redshirt freshman. You're talking about you've got Jeffrey Overton for 3 or 4 more years. This is the last year for Marcellus Hawkins. Unfortunately, he would have had an extra year, but then the 5x5 comes in, so he loses his extra year because he's been injured and would have had probably a medical red shirt. But
a good lawyer could get around that. I bet.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I mean, you got a guy in Messiah Mickens that's pretty highly touted. Like maybe they add a guy to supplement this room in the transfer portal in the offseason, but I think the way this thing is trending, the running back room, you've got a really good recruiter in Norval McKenzie. Like Virginia, it's so funny thinking back to like the beginning of the Pry era where Virginia Tech had like 10 running backs and none of these guys had ever really done much at all. And they had to whittle that room down. And now it's like you've got a really, really strong, talented room where you feel good about 2, 3, maybe even, we haven't seen Mickens play much, but like, Mason's played a little bit too. Like there's more depth here than there has been in the past couple of years, and that's a good thing.
You never know sometimes. You mentioned that 10 running back room. Kenji Christian is still kicking.
Did he transfer back up to FBS?
He came back to UConn. He was on the Freaks list, Bruce Feldman's Freaks list.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be like a 12th-year senior at this point. The other thing about Norval McKenzie, if you were at practice the other day, he runs them through like these ninja warrior drills. It feels like it's like they're doing high knees over pads, and then somebody hits him with a boxing stick, and then they run through the whatever it is, the dummies that hit you, and then they throw like a big medicine ball at you, and then there's a guy
that you're supposed to stiff
then there's
arm.
a guy at the end with like mitts that tries to knock it away. It's like it was a true ninja warrior
American
course that
Gladiator
they had to run
stuff.
through. Yeah,
and
they have Nitro at the end of it with like a machine gun with the tennis balls.
exactly.
Trying to shoot the ball out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That show was great. They need to bring that back.
Oh, they really do.
Big part of my childhood there.
Yeah, it was huge. It was on WGN. Like,
what is the show? I'm sorry.
American Gladiators.
American
The
Gladiators.
Cubs
Okay,
and
I've
American
heard of this.
Gladiators would always be on in the afternoon.
Oh yeah,
it was
solid.
great.
Interesting.
Who would be the best Virginia Tech Hokie going through the American Gladiators Challenge?
A current Virginia Tech Hokie, or
like Copeland is tremendously athletic. I don't know if he'd be ideal for that. Like hanging on the rings, like
think maybe
swinging back and
Marcellus
forth on the
Hawkins.
rings.
You got to get somebody. I would say like a guy like Noah Chambers, just how physically put together
He'd be
is.
pretty good,
Yeah.
because you have to have some size to
Right.
it too. It can't just be
Yeah.
agility.
Sheldon Robinson's a good-looking guy in his uniform.
Yeah. That'd be a good question.
Interesting
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Man, I should have thought about this for media day. I should have asked
yeah.
every
You should've.
player.
Yeah.
All right. So
They don't even know what American Gladiators.
They
is.
don't.
What am I
Yeah.
talking about?
but they could have pretended. They could have leaned
You can
into
ask the
it, so-
coaches. They would.
There-
they
there
would
you
know.
go, yeah.
So trivia question about running backs for Virginia Tech last year. How many touchdowns, you guys may know this, how many touchdowns did Virginia Tech's running backs account for last year on the ground?
2.
4.
Three.
Was it 3?
It's a 3.
Can
I
you
remember
guess the
Overton
three?
and Hawkins had one.
Who had
Tyler
the third?
Mason have one?
He did not.
He did not.
Oh,
Terry-
it
what do you
was
got? What do you
Terry
got?
Stewart.
got
It was not Terrion Stewart. What do you got,
Oh,
Nick?
yeah.
What do you got?
Braden Bennett.
Braden
That's right.
Bennett
Oh, that's
against
right.
Wofford, yes.
Terry
Against
Stewart did not
Wofford.
have a single rushing touchdown.
He did not. Well, he had the longest run of the year, 85
He got caught
against
from
NC
behind on
State.
that
Yeah.
NC State
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I thought he got in the end zone at least once. Other
Yeah.
than
Me
that. Wow.
too.
So it was one Braden Bennett against Wofford. Marcellus Hawkins had one, and Jeffrey Overton had one.
One of them, one was against Florida State, maybe. I forget the games in which they happened, to be honest.
Well,
So think about this for a
You're
second.
right. One against Wofford. One against. Who did you say?
I mean, it was
Miami. Miami. duh.
Miami. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the
that was
nightmare
Overton.
fantasy football owner situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, come on, just give
My
him the
running
ball
backs
at
are
the
so
1 yard
good,
line.
but they can't. No, I had Jerome Bettis one year on my fantasy football team, like the end of his career when he wasn't getting very many carries. But I remember one game he had 5 carries, -3 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and I'm like, 18 points, buddy.
This is when the Eagles get to the 1 yard line. You're like, it's tush push time now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to get your touchdown from Saquon.
Yeah, I think Carter, like that's going to be the difference in terms of like not having a mobile quarterback around the goal line. Like Virginia Tech just used Kyron Jones as a battering ram.
They'll bring in Luke Reynolds and the Wildcat.
Yeah, he had 9
Taking over.
touchdowns on the ground. I'll give you that. So a little bit.
Imagine if you
different.
spread out Drone's 9 touchdowns among Stewart, Hawkins, and Overton. Like that, where each of these guys have 3 or 4. that's a little bit of the difference. And I also think we'll get to the offensive line a little bit, but an improved offensive line, improved tight end blocking, that makes the whole running game much better.
All right, and with that, let's step aside and hear from the Hokie Way here on Tech Sideline.
Hi, this is Bud Foster. In 2026, the Hokie Way has enhanced its charitable impact by launching 3 initiatives that will create important awareness and support communities across Virginia. Hokies for Sports promotes the positive impacts of athletic participation. Hokies for Community levels the playing field for underserved communities. And Hokies for Health advocates for community health and funding for research to fight diseases. To learn more and support the mission, go to thehokieway.org.
And welcome back to episode 498 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We appreciate you tuning in wherever you may be across the Commonwealth of Virginia or across the globe around the world on techsideline.com. We hope wherever you're tuning in, we hope to see you in College Park, Maryland. If you want to pull that bad boy up, Nick. On September 19th, the Hokies take on the Terps in College Park. Hokie Way is putting on a tailgate takeover. The early bird ticket promotion is currently $100, so we look forward to seeing you there in College Park. That is a month away from today.
That's a night game, too. So you got a whole day to tailgate.
Got to book a hotel for that still.
Ooh.
First road game of the year, too.
It's in D.C. We'll find a place.
Ride the Metro in, yeah. I'm still undecided whether or not I'm going to go to that game. I kind of want to go see a game in Maryland, but we'll cross that bridge when we get
The
there.
stadium's nothing special.
I went in 2005. It was weird just being on an urban campus like that after being to so many college town campuses in my life. What I remember is like you could walking through the campus and you feel like, yeah, you're in DC, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the campus, there's like a barn where like they're with like horses, where like that department has a place. It just felt so out of place because Maryland's such an urban campus.
Well, maybe if you want to avoid the stadium and you're a Northern Virginia Hokie, you can still hit up the tailgate takeover. There you go, by the way, presented by the Hokie Way. So appreciate their support all season long. But rolling on with the offense for Virginia Tech, we mentioned the running backs being a strength for the Hokies. Certainly the tight ends room is as well. I think you mentioned, Chris, it may be one of the deepest in the country. You can understand why. Luke Reynolds, Benji Gosnell, Jerikas Harrison, and Harrison St. Germain is really as loaded of a room as you're going to find on this team.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you watch this podcast, you might have watched or might have read my tight ends preview, but you're talking about almost 3,000 career snaps between Virginia Tech's top 4 tight ends. And, you know, I think their actual production doesn't match their talent level because of their situations. Like, you could look at a guy like Benji Gosnell. 2024, he caught 32 passes for Virginia Tech. And then last year, in an offense that didn't feature the tight end, he only caught 12, right? Like, he would have more career receptions than, I believe it's 56, if last year's offense had matched his skill set. And then he's behind even Luke Reynolds. And Luke Reynolds, who was a former number one tight end recruit coming out of high school, 5-star, upper level 4-star, depending on how you look at. He's one of those guys who played a lot of quarterback in high school, wasn't all that experienced as a tight end. They threw him into the fire as a true freshman. Played a lot last year as a true sophomore and had some good games, but he's just hitting his stride now as a player. As his 3rd year, he's now that he actually has experience at his position, and he's probably, I would say he's one of those guys in college football that your average fan for other teams hasn't heard of, but is one of those guys who could break out and could be like a household name by the end of the season. And even if you look behind those guys, Hairston was fairly productive in the passing game last year, had 3 receiving touchdowns, 12 overall catches, former walk-on from Bassett. Mm-hmm. Man, you've got all these Bassett guys fighting for playing time this year. It's crazy. And then Harrison St. Germain, he caught a touchdown pass in the Military Bowl against Tulane. You know, he's got experience on the field. Out of the Virginia Tech's returning tight ends that have been in the program, he's probably been their most effective blocker. Now, what you have to look at is, I went through the last 4 years at Penn State, and the last 3 years, Penn State had a 3 tight end rotation where the 4th tight end wouldn't get more than like 20 snaps in a season in garbage time. If you go back 4 years, they did get their 4th tight end, 75 snaps. But your likely situation here is, maybe Hairston or St. Germain might be the odd man out if you just look at how many tight ends Penn State played the last 3 years, unless that 4th guy has a very unique skill set that is different from the other 3. So I think it's probably got a pretty good battle going on for that 4th spot.
Do we finally believe that tight ends are actually going to be a big part of this passing offense?
I
'Cause I feel like it's been
actually
said so many times.
I actually believe it.
And I was going back and like, even I think the best tight end room that they had, and the one that sticks out in my mind, is when Dalton Keene and James Mitchell were here at the same time in 2019, and I'm like, well, that was the year they really caught a lot of passes. I went back to look, and it was 46 catches for them combined.
They were impactful catches.
It was like
but not a
25 and
large
21.
number.
But you have
So
to
it's
remember, Mitchell also part of Mitchell's impactfulness was he got a lot of carries around the goal line.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's how he got
right.
sideswiped on his knee and is out for the
and
year. Maybe
Dalton
it's a-
Keene, remember he was taking handoffs as a running back.
Yeah,
part of
it
that
was
year,
it was a
too?
weird offense, but it's like, are they going to throw the ball to the tight ends like we remember them throwing the ball to Bucky Hodges when we pretended that he was a tight end?
Right.
He was really a tight end for 1 year and then a receiver the rest of his time here. But it feels like you have to go that far back before you're like, oh, that's a tight end they threw the ball to. Like him and Ryan Mallett that 1 year. When Leffler was the coordinator, and he was a tight coordinator who truly threw the ball to the tight ends quite a bit. And still one of the prettiest play calls I remember is the one on the goal line against Ohio State right before halftime, where it's everybody goes to the right and then Malik leaks out to the left. And there's just a throwback, and there's nobody within 20 yards of him for the touchdown. That was just like, does that play ever not work?
Leffler brought his A game against Ohio State as a former Michigan man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did. And I feel like that tight end throwback always works. Yeah. There was a famous one, Auburn against Alabama, from Cam Newton to the late Philip Lutzenkirchen, who that like did a little dance in the end zone. That was like I just feel like the tight end throwback always works. So put that in the offense. Little hint for you.
Maybe
I'm going to
don't
take a wild guess and say that's probably somewhere in the playbook.
Yeah.
Maybe don't include the screen to the offensive tackle though.
That's a bad one.
There was a certain tight end throwback pass in 1998 that we won't talk about, that is famous amongst Virginia Tech fans for the wrong reasons.
Well, my point is, if I'm giving you an over-under on catches for Luke Reynolds this year,
Just Luke Reynolds?
Just Luke Reynolds, what would you put it at?
42.
Over under?
Yeah.
I would put over under Luke Reynolds, say 38 and a half.
Okay. I'd probably take the over on those numbers. I feel like the fan base, if it's less than 50, they'll be disappointed.
I think Gosnell could get like 25 also.
I do, but I just think the way that Reynolds is being hyped right now, and the way he played in the spring game when Gosnell was not here, he was at a wedding.
Right.
That weekend. Or was that Ace and Stevens?
Was,
Maybe I'm confusing them.
Yeah.
Gosnell did not. I don't think Gosnell.
I think it was
played.
Ace another way.
I think it was
that's what it
Stevens.
was. Maybe I'm confusing those two. But the way Reynolds, because Gosnell played and he had some catches in the spring game.
He got married this summer. That's what.
Okay, that's
he
right.
got married this
confusing
summer.
them. But Reynolds had such a big game in the spring game that I think the hype train is off the charts with him. That if he doesn't have like a 50 catch season, I think people are like, he's underused. They need to throw the ball to him more. And I realize tight ends do more than just catching the ball.
Right.
And this is the fantasy football owner and all of us that's like, well, just looking at receptions when the position requires so much more. But I truly think this is a year where we talk about tight ends. They're going to throw the ball at tight ends, and they actually will.
This will bleed into our wide receiver discussion, so it's a good transition. But I'm doing an Inside the Numbers article because last week, I think you asked the question on this podcast, how many catches are the wide receivers going to catch? So I actually, I got a question in the Q&A last week that asked about offensive production numbers, and I started running them, and I got about 800 words deep into the answer, and I'm like, well, this is going to be much better as an article on its own. So I'm working on the article probably for next week, I guess. But 2 of the last 4 years at Penn State, the number 2 wide receiver caught 23 passes or less. That's how heavy the tight ends are involved in Penn State's offense over the last 4 years. And the running backs catch a lot of passes too. The number 5 receiver at Penn State over the last 4 years averaged 4.75 catches per season. The number 6 receiver averaged 3.5. So as a wide receiver, you better be, and even one of those years, the 4th receiver didn't catch double-digit passes.
I think last year was like 7 and 3 for the 4th and 5th receivers.
Yeah. So you better be in the top 3 or 4 wide receivers at Virginia Tech if you want to catch double-digit passes, because the tight ends are going to catch a lot. And yes, Ty Howle wasn't the offensive coordinator in those years, but that's the James Franklin offense, and he's the tight ends coach. So I think that competition we're going to see at receiver, like I think those guys, I hope they're approaching it with a sense of urgency, because if they're not in the top 4, you're not going to touch the ball very much.
you know, dating back to the beginning of the Pry era, I put these numbers in my tight ends feature I wrote a couple weeks ago. You want to know what the most catches by the tight end group as a whole was in each of the last 4 seasons? 60. In 2022, Virginia Tech's tight ends caught 60 passes.
Because they didn't have any wide receivers.
Outside of Caleb Smith.
You're right.
It's true.
Nick Gallo had 30 of those catches. That is the second most of any individual tight end behind Benji Gosnell's 32 in 2024. Over that same span, you want to know what the fewest catches by Penn State's tight end group is?
It's a good question here, David.
96.
Last year, it was 61.
Yeah. Luke Reynolds caught 26 passes at Penn State last year.
So Penn State's, that's since Ty Howle has been
That was
the tight ends
61
coach.
with the backup quarterback playing for half the year.
Yes.
So you have to consider that too.
I mean, we're talking
Coming off a Tyler Warren hangover.
Right.
From
Yeah.
when they just gave him the ball in every single play the year before.
Yeah, Penn State's tight ends behind Tyler Warren had 127 catches 2 years ago. But that was when Tyler Warren had like the 5th most receiving. Tyler Warren finished his career with like the 5th most receiving yards all time by a
Didn't he
tight
have like
end.
20 catches or something like that at USC that one time? He had some crazy
It was
game
insane,
when they
yeah.
went out west.
But you look at 2022, Penn State's tight ends had 66 catches, 73 in 2023. 127 and 61. Virginia Tech's tight ends last year had 28 catches. Like Luke Reynolds almost had as many catches as Virginia Tech's tight end room as a whole. And I look at this group because I find it very interesting because not only do you have Reynolds and Gosnell, but like the guy who caught the most touchdown passes of the tight ends last year was Jerikas Hairston.
Yeah.
He had 2 against Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And he's been used as an H-back. He was lead blocking for Kyron Drones around the goal line, but he also, that touchdown against Georgia Tech, one of them was he was lined up kind of in the slot and ran a streak down the field, and then the other one, he kind of just popped out around the goal line. And Harrison St. Germain, as you mentioned, is kind of he's been the best blocker of the group. So I'm curious to see like what the snap splits will look like, because you don't really want to take Reynolds or Gosnell probably off the field, but the other 2 guys have sort of unique skill sets as far as like Hairston can do it all and St. Germain's more of a pure blocking guy. So I think Ty Howle, he's the offensive coordinator. He's got a lot of options as far as who he wants to put where. Again, it's a really good problem to have because we're going to talk about the receivers here in a sec. We're not really sure after maybe number 3 what that room looks like. Well, you could always put more tight ends on the field. That's Virginia Tech's thing this year. And I would say, like, if we're going to set an over, I would say over under 66.5 catches by tight ends this year. That's the question I'll present to you guys.
Over under 66.5. That's
I think
Chris and
60
Andy
to 70
question.
is about where I would put it.
Okay.
Just based on preseason expectations.
What did I say? 42 for Reynolds, and I said I could see Gosnell catching 25.
I think
so
you're taking easily
makes
taking the
sense.
over.
Yeah.
By the way, 17 catches for Tyler Warren that day against USC.
224 yards.
224.
and a
That's
touchdown.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's like
Crazy.
the entire tight end production last
Well,
year.
I'll say this: if they left Luke Reynolds in for 4 quarters against VMI, he might do that
He might.
against them.
Yeah.
That might be counterproductive.
It
at that
might
point,
be.
but-
Can you play 4 tight ends though consistently?
I don't.
Okay.
Penn State
No.
hasn't done it the last
Yeah,
3
I
years.
didn't think so.
They were
So you
able.
for it.
They were able to do it in 2022. That 4th guy had 75 snaps. I didn't look to see who it was or how big he was, but he might have been like a specialist goal line blocker or something. But I don't see like a specialist here amongst this group of tight ends. So I think it's going to be.
It's always less than what you think.
Yeah, sure.
When your
Exactly.
receivers coach is like, we like to have 6 or 7 guys.
Or Holman Wiggins wanted
that
8.
means 3 or 4.
Yeah.
We want to have 3 backs we rotate. That means 2. Like they never have that many. We'd like to have 8 or 9 offensive linemen that we trust. It's always 6. It's like 5 and then 1 guy that can come in off the bench. Nobody has the ideal depth.
Yeah. It's like if you get pulled over and you're going 52 and a 45. Oh, I was going 47. So not that that's ever happened to me, but that's kind of the first
I mean,
analogy that came to mind.
I think it's a kind of a weird problem because you can put Luke Reynolds in the slot. Like if you wanted to split Quayshawn Brown out wide, Aiden Green out wide, Luke Reynolds in the slot, you could have another tight end in there, right? Like you play Benji Gosnell kind of up against the offensive line and Reynolds in this. Like there's so much they can do. I wonder if there's, for that third spot, there's a little bit of a split. Like Hairston plays some, St. Germain plays some. I would probably lean towards St. Germain being kind of the odd guy out. Because I think Hairston has more versatility, but like I go back to what Andy said.
But maybe on the goal line, you want St. Germain.
Correct. But I go back to what Andy said. Like it's been a long time since Virginia Tech's had this talented of a tight end room. And you talk about like I went down the list of tight ends with 70 plus receiving yards in a game. You got Dalton Keene in 2018, James Mitchell and Keene both did it against Miami in 2019. Mitchell did it again in 2019, again in 20. And then Daquan Wright was the last guy to do it in 2023. Yeah. But I think you will see, I mean, Luke Reynolds basically did it in limited action in the spring game. Like, he's got a relationship with Egan Grunkemeyer. You will see Virginia Tech utilize the tight ends a lot. That's just the way it's going to be. And it's going to be a little bit different offense, given that last season, Hairston and Gosnell caught 12 catches each. That was the high watermark in that tight end room. It's going to be completely night and day.
Perfect transition to the receiving core, too. We've talked about this ad nauseum the last couple of weeks, but you know, the top two guys there with Quayshawn Brown and Aiden Green are two guys to really get excited about when you look at this offense for Virginia Tech. But beyond that, who's that next group to step up, and how many more guys can you play beyond those two in the receiving core for Virginia Tech?
I think Marlon Jackson is your third guy right now. I guess when Virginia Tech's initial depth chart will probably list like 12 first-team players, like 3 wide receivers and 2 tight ends, but either that second tight end or that third wide receiver won't start, and it'll be dependent on the formation they open the game in.
They do that both. I mean, they list a nickel back typically on defense.
Exactly. I think just based on the numbers that I put out there earlier, you're probably only going to catch a decent number of passes as a wide receiver if you're in the top 4. And even last year at Penn State, I believe their third wide receiver didn't get their fourth wide receiver didn't get double-digit catches. And your second wide receiver, 2 of the last 4 years, caught 23 or fewer passes. So I think, like I said, I hope there's a sense of urgency amongst those wide receivers because you're not going to be – your 5th or 6th guys aren't going to catch a ton of passes. So I think Marlon Jackson's their third guy right now. So who's that 4th guy and who's the 5th guy? Because I don't think past those guys, there's going to be a ton of snaps to go around. And so I think that's a really healthy competition. And I think right now, based on what little bit we've seen so far, I think probably Tyseer Denmark and Luke Stewie in the 4th and 5th spots would be my guess right now.
I think Snook Peterkin could be in there too.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger guy, I think, than Denmark, certainly. Takai Heath is an interesting one. I mean, he's had production. He had a great catch last year in the Cal game to sort of save that one there at the end. It's weird because we talk about the wide receivers, and there's so many personalities or like names that you know.
Yeah.
Because like Chance Wiggins, Keelan Adams were blue chip recruits when they were coming in here. Snook Peterkin. He was a big recruit last year. He has an interesting name that goes with it. Fat Rat is an interesting name, so we've heard of that guy. Takai Heath has made plays previously. Luke Stewie, legacy guy, so that name is familiar around here. Denmark comes up a lot because he was a Penn State transfer. But just because we know those names, sometimes if you like know the names, it feels like there's more depth than there is. But a lot of these guys have not produced.
But nobody knows Marlon Jackson's name, and he's probably the third guy.
But sometimes we talk about it's like, oh man, they got this guy and this guy and this guy. It's like just because you know them doesn't mean there's like good depth or that they're going to step up in this situation. So I think I look at it and good luck to Fontel Mines sorting this thing out and keeping everybody happy in that room. You're not going to. I think inevitably you're going to see some transfers just because that happens every season at that spot. But I really don't know how to handicap the field once you get past those top 3. I feel fairly confident knowing the top 3, and then it's like, I don't know. I can make a case for each one of them stepping up, or I can make a case against each one of them too.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I actually feel good about this room. I know because it's a bunch of guys that are unknown. But like I said, really at Penn State, only the top 4 guys catch passes consistently, and we feel good about Keyshawn Brown and Aiden Green, and honestly at this point feel reasonably good about Marlon Jackson. So if you could just find that 4th guy and a 5th guy, like before you're thinking, oh, if they're going to play 6 wide receivers, that really leaves 3 spots open, and I don't think they're going to play that many. So if there's not as many spots that are going to get on the field, you feel, but your top 3 guys are reliable, then honestly, I think this will be a solid group for Virginia Tech this year. But like Andy said, there's going to be some disappointed guys after the VMI game, probably, because they're going to play everybody.
Well, we talk about like names and names, It's like, look at last year's roster of guys. The starting trio that you had, actually, well, it didn't end up being this way because Takai Heath ended up starting right away. But your top 3 were Aiden Green, big expectation. I think he followed through on them. Donovan Green,
dude who quit after the
who ended
Louisville
up
game.
leaving midway through the season, and Cam Selden, who never really was a receiver.
Right.
But we talked about those guys so much going into the season because, Donovan Green, look at his production, his history of production at Wake Forest. If he just stays healthy, he'll be fine. Well, it turns out he was healthy and he still didn't produce, and was not pleased with, I guess,
Selden
with his lack
was the
of
former number 1 recruit in the state.
Selden, top recruit, didn't really, he's sort of one of those tweeners, doesn't really have a position. Who was the guy they had play running back and receiver, was from the Richmond area a while ago. I'm blanking on his name. He's a high school quarterback. This is like 15 years ago. Never really found a spot.
Joel Caleb.
Yeah. Kind of reminded me of him a little bit. Like tremendous athlete, but they just could never really find a spot for him. And I feel like Cam Selden is kind of in that same situation. But the way we talked about those guys last year is like, he'll definitely be a big part of these plans. Then he wasn't. So, we'll see. I have a little bit more faith in Quayshawn Brown based on his production last season. But really, the security that I would have in the receivers this year is I think Aiden Green and Quayshawn Brown will be very good. And I think Jackson will produce, but I put those 2 at a level above.
Okay.
I think it really gets kind of murky below that because I think you look in the slot behind Brown, you got Tyseer Denmark and Takai Heath. And Heath is a guy who, but Heath is a guy who had some issues with drops last year and has in his career. He's produced at times, but also been inconsistent at times. That's a far difference from Green and Brown, who combined dropped 2 passes last year.
Right.
And I wonder, in terms of guys in the slot, like if you're playing Luke Reynolds a little bit there, that's eating into somebody's playing time. It's probably going to be Denmark or Heath in the slot. That's just the way it's going to work out.
And here's the thing. Like, we view Keyshawn Brown as a slot because of his size, but you want him and Luke Reynolds in the game at the same time because they're your 2 best playmakers as far as receiving threats. Luke Reynolds is going to be in the slot because that's where you can get the most matchups out of the tight end, which means Brown is on the outside. And he played outside plenty at Duke. So just because of his size, 10 years ago, he's in the slot all the time, but that's not really how it works in the modern game. So if you want to put Takai Heath in the game, and then Luke Reynolds is in the game, can Heath play that outside role? I don't really think he can. So to me, he kind of seems like the odd man out because Reynolds can play in the slot, Brown can play in the slot. There are multiple slot options on this team, and like you said, especially with Reynolds there, who's so versatile.
If you trot out a lineup that has Aiden Green out wide, Quayshawn Brown out wide, Luke Reynolds in the slot, Benji Gosnell is a more traditional tight end, and Marcellus Hawkins at running back, it's a pretty good group of skill guys there.
Skill position.
If
group.
those are the 5 that you're putting out there, I'd feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. I think as far as outside guys go, then it's kind of Peterkin, Stewie. I think those are the 2 guys that have kind of shined through camp, and they're bigger guys, 6'2", both of them. So I think that's the way I'd kind of view it, I guess, as your 2 backup slot guys right now are Heath and Denmark, and your 2 backup outside guys are Peterkin and Stewie, and those are kind of the competitions. And not that other guys can't break in, but it's going to be hard when you've got such a talented line of guys in front of them. Like this is the good thing about James Franklin bringing in more talent.
Oh, it's a heck of a group of skill position players, in my opinion, between running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and a quarterback that can make any throw on the field. If only the offensive line can hold up, right?
Great transition. Great. You got something else
Well, I
before
was
we
just
move?
going to say, don't sleep on Fat Rat.
Don't say, and the other thing too, and you just brought it up a little bit, and this is not to single anybody out, but there will be some guys, you mentioned Takai Heath, that could be the odd man out that has played a lot the last couple of years or consistently. But at the same time, they were 3-9 last year, and James Franklin upgraded the talent. So naturally, I think that's something that's going to happen.
Well, yeah, like Heath's numbers were pretty much the exact same as Cam Seldon's last year. And Cam Seldon saw the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to play, and he left. I don't know, where did he transfer to?
South Florida. With Elijah Brooks.
With Elijah Brooks, right. So, when you upgrade the talent level, that means you're going to over-recruit some guys. And I'm not saying it's definitely going to be Heath, because he has experience and he's in the competition for sure. But you're going to see some guys whose snaps go down, and that's a good thing. Because you want to have better players. You want to constantly be over-recruiting, or like ideally, Virginia Tech would have over-recruited Michael Vick back in the day, right? Found somebody better than Michael Vick, as if that was possible. But if they could have done it, they would have done it. I mean, that's the name of the game. Always be trying to increase your talent level.
I think sometimes it's important to stop and compare different eras. And you look at the first year with Franklin, the kind of players that we mentioned there, compared to the first year that Pry was here and the offensive talent they had in that room. It was Grant Wells, a quarterback, Keyshawn King, Jalen Holston, a running back. Your top receivers are Caleb Smith, Dawan Lofton, Jaden Blue was the third leading receiver.
Jaden Blue.
Nick Gallo and Daquan Wright came along at the end of the year at tight end. I mean, it feels like a world of difference.
And an offensive line that couldn't block. And an offensive coordinator that didn't know how to design an offense around what he did have.
They could block. They just got called for a load of holding penalties.
If you call
false
that
starts.
NC State
There were a
games.
lot of false starts to that one game. But I mean, I think it's just night and day. The talent level on the roster right now. And I think that's why people are very bullish on the future of Virginia Tech, as am I.
Yeah, and you look at that group. I mean, you got Jackson and Green as seniors, but everybody else is eligible to come back. And so, I mean, there's going to be some...
Well, and Green can come back too.
Oh, that's right. He can if he wants to. So let's say he does. So let's say everybody in this room
you're graduating
can come back
one guy.
except for Jackson, who's the third wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's going to be some unhappy people, but it just means next year at this time, we're having the same conversation. Like, who's going to be that fourth receiver and the fifth receiver, and beyond that, it's probably going to be guys who are just going to have to be in the competition again next year, or be in a competition somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's going to be healthy. Like that's the kind of stuff you need.
Yeah.
You've got veterans, and then everybody else is trying to chase them for playing time. Everyone else is trying to earn it. Like I look at a guy like Davion Brown, very interesting because he's a true freshman. Is he really going to break all the way in and see playing time at receiver? I'm not sure. But we talked about him a little bit yesterday when we were discussing special teams. Like he's a guy I could totally see them saying, hey, he might not get a ton of snaps at wideout, but we could put him at punt returner or kick return and give him the ball.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a good problem that the staff has as far as figuring out how to get all these talented guys on the field in as many capacities as they can.
Who's your jet sweep guy?
Yeah. That's true.
Keyshawn Brown, but if he's going to be an outside receiver a lot because Luke Reynolds is in the slot, maybe you don't see as much jet sweep this year.
That's a good problem to have.
Horrify Virginia Tech fans.
Yeah. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. And again, gone through this a little bit the last couple of weeks, but when you look at the offensive line as a whole right now, what is A, the biggest concern, and B, do you feel like that group can sustain an injury if it pops up here the next couple of weeks already after Johnny Garrett's already out?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more bodies in there for sure. It was not a good group last year. It ranked near the bottom in pass blocking and run blocking grades. I mean, it was the perfect storm as far as pass protection goes, because not only could they not do it very well, but then drones struggled to get rid of the ball and didn't have confidence in making throws, which made the problem even bigger than it would have been. I think this group will improve. The question is, how much will it improve? They can improve quite a bit and still be below average. That's how subpar they were last year. And I don't think you're going to see some huge step forward to like 2020 or 2021 level offensive line. It just doesn't, you don't snap your fingers and your offensive line just goes from being the worst in the country to one of the best. It's going to be a gradual improvement. It's going to be, to me, are they going to improve from being one of the worst in the country? Or are they going to be average or slightly below average this year? That's the question to me. I don't think they're going to be like one of the top groups in the ACC, but I think they're going to be a lot more competent than they were last year. The bigger question is like, right now, who's going to start at your offensive tackle positions? I think, Justin Terry, is he a guard or a tackle? Logan Howle, after being injured, I think he'll ultimately start at left tackle for the Hokies. But right now, as of last week, he was still running with the second group. How quickly does he kick off the rust? And assuming he does claim that left tackle position, what do they do with Justin Terry? Do they keep him as the backup left tackle, or do they move him to right tackle, or try him at one of the guard spots? We haven't seen a practice in about a week now, so we don't know what's been going on as far as their top two groups over the last week. We'll see practice again on Friday, and maybe we'll get a better idea of how things have progressed since then. But it's kind of similar situation as it was at the beginning of the spring. It's just a lot of moving parts, but you've got a couple of extra bodies now with Howle and Terry healthy.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is so much of what they're hoping to improve on this year is being based on improvements of guys who are still holdovers from the previous roster. Like, yes, they added Howland. Yes, they added Justin Terry. Maybe Troutman can get into the mix, but other than that, they're sort of relying on guys to progress that have been here. Leif Ganem, Kyle Altuner, Montavious Cunningham, Brody Meadows. I know both of those guys were hurt last year, so it's like you're adding somebody to the roster in that sense, especially with Meadows, who didn't even play last year because he was hurt. But we're talking about a lot of the same guys that have been in the program for a couple of years, and they got Montavious Cunningham at right tackle, and seems like there's been a lot of faith in him over the years, and he's never really hit since he's been here. That first year, it did not really work out. Last year, he got hurt 4 games in, so you didn't really see him out there. I like Altuner. Ganem, I feel like, has left a little bit on the table so far based on where he was, recruiting ranking and all that. So it'll be interesting. Aiden Lynch, another year of development with him after he was sort of thrown in the fire last season. I think it's just O-line, unless you just completely overhaul the group and bring in new people, you're relying on year-to-year progression.
Yep.
And as players get older, they typically get better as they're more physically mature and have handled stuff before. And I think that's what they're banking on. I just don't know if you see just a giant leap with that group.
Yeah, there are very few Christian Darasols that come in and are able to start as freshmen and are really good right away. Generally, you're talking guys aren't that effective until their redshirt sophomore years or later, because it's the position where strength and conditioning is the most important, because of how, they're blocking 22-year-old grown men, right? So building an offensive line is a process, unfortunately. And I think you can turn around your wide receiver room, your quarterback room, your tight end room, your cornerback room, all that in one offseason. But no matter where you're coaching, I think that's a lot more difficult to do on the offensive line.
It'd be nice to find another Darrisaw, right?
It would be.
Just go out there, find another 2-star guy who's like the 1600th.
Sorry, Delaware State. We're going to take your best.
We're going to pluck this guy, send him to Fuma, and then start him against Florida State in his first game. And he kind of surprised, because I think Janzi had started in most of August
and got hurt.
And Darrisaw started there. And I think I remember Fuente afterwards, I'm impressed that we're sitting here in week 2 talking about starting a true freshman left tackle. We didn't give up 10 sacks in that game. That's how good Darrisaw was right off the bat, that he was just a dude from the start.
It wasn't one of those situations where we don't have anybody else and we have to start the freshman. It was a situation where he's good.
But it shows you don't have to they don't all have to be elite recruits.
Exactly.
If you find the right, especially offensive line. I think that's one that, if you have a type in mind, or you do your homework and find guys that have the right traits coming out of high school, they can be really successful as they develop and add size.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt Moore talked about this being a 2-year process.
Well, he said that last year, which is not a great sign when you're in year 1. And you're like, this is typically a 2-year process. Offensive line coaches have had a habit of being truthful to the media before. I remember Ron Crook, for the start of that year, we're like, "You ready for the season?" It's like, I'd like a few more weeks, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. Just like, I mean, I love that you're saying this. I don't know if the fan base wants to hear that right now.
Yeah. So I think keeping Matt Moore around, like that continuity is very important because you can bring back some of these guys. How much better do they get? Like Kyle Altuner started as a true freshman last year.
Redshirt freshman, right?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Red
redshirt.
started as a redshirt freshman
Either
last
way.
year. But I mean, he's got 3 more years in front of him. Like in theory, he's your starting center, for the next couple of years. Like he's one of the foundation building blocks of that offensive line. I think they've got some pieces, but it's such a moving puzzle that it's really hard. Like until they pencil in Howle and Terry, I think it'll be really hard to just figure out what exactly it's going to look like come VMI.
Okay, so same question as yesterday. In some sense, I'm going to go each position group. Can we rank 1 to 5, the one you are 1, the most confident in, or to 5, the least confident in? Between quarterbacks, running backs, offensive line, tight ends, and receivers. 1 through 5.
I would have to say tight ends would be 5, most confident. Probably running backs 4. Quarterbacks. I feel good about Gronkemeyer, but he's still young. So I'd probably give that one like a 3. I think I'm confident in the wide receivers too. I wish they had like one more proven guy, I would say. So I would probably give that one a 3. Offensive line. I'm confident in the future of the offensive line, and I'm confident that it's going to be much better than last year's group. But last year's group was definitely a 1,
Yeah.
right, or below a 1. So I'd probably say 2 for the offensive line.
Well, if I'm ordering him, I go running backs, tight ends are 1A, 1B.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
what would
order.
be your order? Sorry.
I put receivers after that, quarterbacks 4th, offensive line 5th.
Yeah, offensive line definitely 5th.
Yeah. I going down tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks.
Or quarter. When you say quarterbacks, do you mean
I'd say
quarterbacks or
quarterback,
quarterback?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say receivers above quarterbacks as a group.
As a group.
Because I think
right.
there's more more guys at the top that have produced of the receivers, and I think there's more potential further down the line that could contribute in a meaningful way this year than quarterbacks. Where if all of a sudden Snook Peterkin had to play a major role, I think I'd feel more confident about him doing that as a 3rd or 2nd receiver than I would Troy Hune running the show if something happened to Gronkemeyer.
Yeah.
Okay. What's coming up on TechSideline.com? I can't imagine much has changed since yesterday, but we still got to ask the question. So what's coming up on TSL?
Yeah, I think tight ends preview is today. You probably have read that. Is it tight ends? Is it
No,
or wide receivers? I don't remember.
this
There's a
was-
position.
one of them.
There's a
tight
position
ends.
preview today, and another position preview tomorrow, and then a Friday Q&A on Friday.
Okay.
I've got a thoughts column, got a mailbag coming Thursday if we get some questions. So hopefully people are putting some questions in there, and then practice report Friday.
Nice.
Prepping for big podcast tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Nicholas. What you got?
That's about it. Brian White tomorrow. In studio. Fired up. Tune in.
17 days till kickoff. Hard to believe. But it's crazy because tomorrow's August 20th, and we still got 2.5 weeks until kickoff. It's kind of interesting.
Late Labor Day.
Right. So you got to think probably a week from today, they'll pare down that 2 deep, and at that point, you're just the guys who they think are going to help them the most throughout the course of the season are going to start to get the most reps.
All right. Fun podcast today. Fun podcast. That'll do it. Episode 498 of the Tech Sideline podcast. So for Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from Blacksburg. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you very soon.